Hello everybody, JJ here. It is Bull, Boom, Bear, Bust. It is April 7th. It is a Tuesday. Wow, where do we start? So much news, so many things happening. In my news scan today, these are some of the bigger things that I want to discuss that I think are being underreported or not being reported at all. I try to scan some of the other financial channels on YouTube before doing my reports so I don't repeat what other channels are doing, but it's impossible because there's so many different channels. But here are the things that I think are important but kind of underreported here. Many states can't pay unemployment claims. We're going to talk about that and why that's happening and what the solution might be. 401K early withdrawal penalties are being waived, sort of. We're going to talk about what that means. The stimulus money being sent to Americans this week. Is it going to happen? We'll talk about that. Less people driving equals lower car insurance. Refunds are being sent. So maybe some good news in this current dark cloud that we're in right now as a country. And here's one here. Prisoners being released while people are being fined for leaving their home. They're being given citations. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, take a look at the markets today. Most major indexes ended up in the red today. Not very far in the red, but when you look at the market earlier in the day, the Dow Jones actually, when it opened, the Dow Jones today at the open surged up to over 23,500 before closing the day nearly 1,000 points off of the day's high. But nonetheless, we are starting to see an uptrend develop. The sell-offs haven't been as bad in the past week or so, while there's been some pretty big up days. I'm actually not still in these markets. I used to do some swing trading or sometimes hold trades for a few days or a few weeks. I actually closed down my Robinhood account after the outages that we had that lasted for several days. So I know a few of you were asking about that. Asking about what trades I've been in. I still do have my E-Trade account. Now that's for long-term trades that I hold for sometimes a year, sometimes more. Gold miner stocks. I typically do not hold ETFs long-term because they have such bad price decay, most of them anyways. So let's go ahead and start right here in the news. Nearly half of U.S. states don't have enough money to pay all of the unemployment claims. Right, so on the back of the 10 million new filings just in the matter of 2 weeks at the end of March, states are now finding, about half of the U.S. states are finding that they're underfunded for these unemployment benefits. But guess what? The states can just get bailed out by the central bank, by the Fed. Right, so this is the solution, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't pay these claims. These are people that obviously need the money. They're filing unemployment. So if they can bail out too big to fail financial institutions and corporations, I think most people would agree that yes, they should go ahead and fund these unemployment claims. But what is going to happen long term? Do we think we can keep on running up debt forever? And that there's not going to be a reckoning day, there's not going to be a price to pay. There's absolutely going to be a price to pay. It may not be your or my price to pay, but it's going to be our kids or grandkids. All right, but it could happen sooner. Maybe you and I will see the just the devastation that's going to blast across the land, for lack of a better term. Once they stop issuing never-ending debt, you're going to see so many people starving. It's already started to happen. We just talked about in a previous report, I think it was 2 reports ago, how crime is increasing in most cities now since the lockdown and the huge job losses began. We're only starting to see the tip of the iceberg as far as the unrest and the despotism that we're going to see out of a lot of the population. So I again want to reaffirm, defend yourself, try to have a way to protect what you have and protect your family's lives. I won't go into too much more detail on how to do that. There's plenty of other channels that talk about that. But from an economic, financial standpoint, people are going to be desperate and they're going to be broke, and they're going to get more and more desperate as time goes on. And I think we might want to ask ourselves, what are people that are desperate and hungry, people that can't feed themselves or maybe their family, what are they going to do in order to get something to feed themselves with or get something to sell in order to get some money to feed themselves with? Just a quick excerpt out of this article here. Chief Investment Officer at Omnia Family Wealth said, quote, "The flood of unemployment claims is something that no state was planning for. I believe many states will still require federal aid," unquote. Well, of course, if they can't afford it, We have the federal government in conjunction with the Fed that has unlimited funds to disperse. All right, but I think the key word here is planning. They didn't plan for this, and that's true. It seems like everywhere you look, people are not ready for this. Nobody planned. States are not ready for it. Nobody planned. The federal government, nobody planned. And an example would be, look at the huge pensions that these states are paying out. But it's not just the federal employees. I mean, just look at I think the financial foolishness starts at the top with the federal government. Look at all of the activities that we've been involved in as a country that we simply cannot afford, that it just requires ever increasing amounts of debt. Look at our military. Look how overpaid our politicians are. Look at our space funding for space programs. While we have tens of thousands and who knows, it could be millions of people living on the streets now in the United States. And also think about this, if the cost of living wasn't so high, there wouldn't be so many people that need to be on unemployment after only a few weeks of being out of work. So many people are buried under so much debt that as soon as somebody misses one or two paychecks, they have to file unemployment. Of course, even if people don't need the money, they're going to file it anyway, but there's a lot of desperate people out there, as most people do live paycheck to paycheck, and this is just a natural progression here of people just trying to keep food on the table in many cases. Let's take a look at this right here. This is an article out of Fortune.com. 401k withdrawal penalties waived under the stimulus package. Now, it may sound good on the surface. Normally, you are assessed a pretty large fee for withdrawing your funds out of the 401k retirement account before you get a certain age. But there is a bit of a catch here. I'm going to read from here. One provision lets investors of any age take out as much as $100,000 from retirement accounts this year without paying an early withdrawal penalty. They can also avoid taxes on the withdrawal if the money is put back into the account within 3 years. So you're still going to be taxed on it. But think about someone that is taking money out of their retirement account. They must be pretty desperate to begin with. And I think many of us would agree that I only recommend this as a last resort. This should be only a last resort situation where you're taking money out of your retirement. So these people are already desperate, but yet they can't waive the taxes on these. Right? So we have an unlimited debt printing press, yet we can't waive the taxes. Sorry, folks. All right, let's get into a little bit of positive news here. Stimulus checks, money to be sent to Americans starting this week, ? Well, we can never trust what we're being told out of many of these quote-unquote officials. But let's go ahead and take a look at what's being reported here. This is another Forbes article, and Kudlow is out there giving this information that they're reporting on, so you want to take this with a bit of caution here. Stimulus checks to go out this week. Now remember, Kudlow, he was one of the people, one of the mainstream talking heads that said that there was no housing bubble before the housing market went crash in 2008. All right, well, let's go ahead and skip to the main point here that many of you probably are waiting to hear. The week of April 13th, 60 million checks will be distributed through direct deposit. The week of May 4th, the IRS will start sending out the paper stimulus checks. So if you get direct deposit, if you go paperless, in that case, you're going to get your checks sooner. And each week thereafter, approximately 5 million paper checks will be issued each week. So there you go. You're incentivized to be paperless because with a paper check, you may go into the bank and ask for bills, and we know a lot of the banks don't have enough bills to pay what people are trying to withdraw in many cases. So this could be a tactic here to get more people to go paperless. That would be my guess on this. A couple last things here, maybe some good news. Maybe some of these people calling me doom and gloom will stop calling me this if I throw in some good news here and there. Allstate CEO driving his way down due to the medical panic here, and they're lowering people's premiums in the interim. Some companies are doing 90 days where they lower people's rating based on the lowest mileage. And if you didn't know, the insurance companies, many of them will charge you more based on how far you drive. They'll track your annual mileage. And if you didn't know it, your mileage is being tracked by some repair facilities where it goes into a database and insurance companies get the report. So sometimes they can see how far you're driving, and other times they'll just ask you if you have a commute to your job. But if you're paying for car insurance and you do have a commute that you have reported to your insurance company, may try giving them a call and let them know if you're not at work, of course, that you're not driving or not driving as much. And there have been reports here that several companies are working with people, giving people a 90-day lower rate in order to see what happens. And after 90 days, if the sickness outbreak and things like that are still happening and people start going back to work, or maybe not, they'll see what happens after 90 days. But at least give them a call if you're paying your insurance premium. You may get a lower rate. But hopefully after this, many more companies will have people working from home. I've mentioned in a couple videos, in my last Patreon video, I mentioned that I'm working from home and I love it. I don't ever want to have to drive back to the office. I'm pretty much in my sweatpants every day and lounge clothes, and I don't miss putting on the office clothes at all. And I took a voluntary cut to my hours. So now instead of working 40 hours, I'm working 30 hours. So maybe I'll have time to put out more videos. We'll have to see. And last but not least, prisoners being released while people are being fined and penalized for leaving their home. It is true. Let's look at this article right here. And this report is out of the Wall Street Journal. Jails are releasing prisoners fearing the medical outbreak in the prison facilities. Now, a lot of these prisoners are in there for non-violent crimes, so I definitely don't disagree with some of these people being released. In fact, some of them, many of them, should have never been arrested in the first place when it comes to non-violent crimes, like petty theft or some low-level drug offense where someone's just using drugs and they get arrested even though they're really not hurting anyone else. So hopefully they're not letting violent people out. But here's the interesting part, in my opinion. The stay-at-home order here in California has police giving out citations to people watching the sunset on the beach. Now, I've talked about this in a previous video, and I mentioned that I was a bit paranoid that I was going to get pulled over, and technically, if your story doesn't match up or if the cop just doesn't like you, he can give you a citation for not being at home. And this reminds me of something that happened back in the 1940s. Can I see your papers, please? If you're out going to get food or some other, what they call an essential activity, then they'll let you slide. The problem is it's a very subjective term. What you think might be an essential activity might not be essential to that particular police officer. But a little more details out of here. This is out of Fox.com. The San Diego County Sheriff's Office said Saturday that tickets were issued to 22 people who were watching the sunset, having picnics near the beach in Encinitas. That's North San Diego here. All right, so what do we think about this? We're getting to a point where we have to decide, is the cure, or what they're calling the cure, the quarantines, the lockdowns, is the cure worse than the disease? When you look at all the economic hardship, the financial situations that many people are in because of the shutdown, because of the job losses, and again, you're seeing crime go up, you're seeing more people get depressed, more domestic disputes, more stress and depression. We're going to see people choosing to leave this earth if things don't start getting better for certain people in the situation. It's pretty sad. And what do you think? Is the cure, what they're calling the cure, worse than the disease? Well, I'm definitely leaning in that direction. But, I mean, the virus is a real thing. I've heard from people here on the channel. I talk to people at work that have customers that have it. So it's definitely a real thing. My question is, though, is their solution worse than what we're seeing as far as the sicknesses and the cases? All right, everybody, thanks for watching this report here. Appreciate your support. Thank you for being here. If you like what we talk about, please help us out with a thumbs up and a share of the video, or just a comment. I love reading the comments. Hopefully I'll have more time now to go through more of your comments now that I'm not working full time. And hope everyone is staying well, staying safe, and staying sane in this situation. So thanks, everybody. Bye for now.